I need to share this somewhere, even if it means betraying the vows and the oaths I took to keep confessions told to me a secret. Even if a terrible sin will fall upon my soul, I cannot keep this to myself anymore. I'm a terrible priest, I know. My soul is blackened, and I deserve hell, but I cannot help it. I believe in God and the atoning sacrifice of our Lord Jesus Christ, and I still do. But the devil, demons, evil spirits, I confess, I considered them nothing more than symbols of the dark impulses of the human soul. But now, what I heard at confession today shocked me. In the world I saw, there were only people and God. But the words of the sinner who came to me made me see terrible creatures hiding in the corners of this world. The man's voice was strange, even frightening. He spoke like a madman, telling terrible things with both tension and joy. He came in like a natural disaster and did not even let me say a word. So, well, Holy Father, or how should I address you? It doesn't matter. I will call you that anyway. In short, listen, I have committed a sin, a terrible sin. My soul is black, and nothing will wash it away. By God, I swear to you. They came for me. I have tested Mother Fortuna for too long, and now she has turned her white backside to me. You ask who came for me. How should I know? Demons, devils, maybe someone even worse. I only know that to expect good from them is like expecting hemorrhoids from aspirin. Anyway, listen to how it all started. I was a student. I was poor and hungry and a complete wreck all of the time. I somehow got by during my first year of study, but then it became harder and harder. I took on any job that I possibly could. Anything at all would do. And then one day, my friend, Xenia, with whom I studied in the same year, told me that he had a plan on how to make money very quickly. He did not need to explain anything else to me. I heard him say the word money, and I was ready to take on the job without even asking what I needed to do. But it was a shame I did not ask right away. Xenia only told me, come to me at nighttime. You will understand everything for yourself. Hey, Holy Father, just don't think that I would let him bite me in the ass for money. No, we're not like that. Although now I look at it and think about it, it would have been better. At least Xenia's life would have remained with him, and those creatures would not have come from my skin. Anyway, I went to visit him, and he immediately shoved a shovel into my hands and said, we're going to the cemetery. Why in the hell do we need shovels? I did not immediately figure it out. I asked Xenia, but he looked at me and said, what, are you fooling around? We are going to dig into the ground. And then it dawned on me what Xenia was proposing to me. By God, I wanted to refuse right away. Why take such a sin on my soul? But I was not in the position to think about my soul and refuse money. So I kept quiet, and together with Xenia, having thrown our tools into the trunk of his car, we headed to the place of work. I did not know why Xenia was doing this. His parents were rich people. They were so rich, they bought a car for him as a gift. I asked him then why he was digging up graves, and he said that it was almost a family affair, and that his great-great-great-grandfather had introduced this tradition to him. Yes, what a fun family. He said that he saw how tight I was with money, and decided to take me in. I was only grateful. The first few times it was scary, yes. I even fainted once when I saw a corpse, but then I got used to it. What is there to be afraid of if they are all dead? There was no zombie apocalypse, so what could be so scary in a pile of rot and worms? My fear subsided before my conscience. For a long time, it tortured me at night, tormenting me what a scoundrel I am, stealing from the dead. That's bad, evil. And then it calmed down. Really, why the hell do they need jewelry, gold, diamonds? Did they decide to show off before God or the devils? Well, in general, things went well. We dug and traded, and now we have money to burn. Our dirty business dragged on for a long time, and now our last case has arrived, although we didn't know then that it would be our last. Xenia, as always, found another cemetery. He came to me and started telling me everything. He seemed so uncontrollably excited by everything that he was telling me. He was so happy. It looked like he had just been told that he inherited 1 billion rubles from his unknown billionaire aunt. He says he found a cemetery where no living person has set foot for 200 years. He says you can dig up precious trinkets with a shovel, both literally and figuratively. Well, what about me? I did not need any convincing at all. We left the next morning. The cemetery was in the middle of nowhere, so we drove for a long time and arrived in the evening. There was some kind of creepy village next to the cemetery. We chatted with the people there normally, but then 6 o'clock rang. They all went home, and the village emptied out so quickly, as if no one had ever lived there. It was a shame we were not wary then. We waited until midnight, just like in a horror movie, and went to our workplace. We walked through the forest for about 20 minutes, and finally came out to a large clearing. We had seen countless cemeteries by this point, and yet it still scared us somehow. Ancient. It smelt of antiquity. As they say, there was silence all around. Some kind of special silence, not like in other cemeteries. By God, I even heard the blood flowing in my ears. That is how quiet it was. Without thinking twice, we started digging the first grave we came across. The inscriptions on them were no longer legible. Time had erased everything and had left all of the graves weathered and worn. We dug in turns, and it so happened that I was the one who dug up the coffin. Well, I took it and gave the lid a good smash. The wood fell apart, and I saw the owner of the grave we had disturbed. You know, Holy Father, those skeletons always have their jaws hanging down, as if screaming at us with a terrible cry to get away. But this cry is silent. I started picking out these boards and finally exposed the entire skeleton, and it was well decorated. A gold necklace, earrings, and rings. Oh, there were so many rings that I jokingly called this dead lady the mistress of the rings. I wanted to take off the necklace, but as soon as I touched it, I immediately recoiled. A huge centipede crawled out of the eye socket of the skull. Well, or whatever these creatures are called. Ugh, you can never get used to these freakish insects that lurk in these places. I flicked the stupid bug away from me and began to collect the jewelry and hand it to Xenia. He put them in a bag. I collected everything quickly, and I was about to climb out, when I heard something cracking, and suddenly I fell somewhere. Boom, and my back was spread out on some kind of flooring. The robbed lady flew after me, as if demanding her jewelry back. She fell right on top of me. By this point, I was honestly not even afraid of the dead or skeletons anymore. However, when an old, disgusting skull falls directly onto your face, with bugs and beetles pouring out from every single crack and hole, you can't help but feel uncomfortable. I quickly threw this lady off myself, shook myself off, and tried to look around. I had fallen through somewhere in the ground. I had fallen for what looked like maybe 4 or 5 meters, possibly even more. It was darkness, pitch black. You can't see a damn thing. I could only hear Xenia calling me. I shout back at him, saying everything is fine. Throw me a flashlight down here. I'll see what's going on here. You, Holy Father, are probably wondering how I fell so far on my back and still survived in one piece. Well, I'll tell you what, I did not survive in one piece. I was pretty bruised. And I did not break my back because I fell on something soft. Xenia threw me a flashlight. I turned it on and saw that the ground here was covered in moss and, by God, bones. Whose bones these are, animal or human, I don't know, and I don't want to know. I shouted to Xenia. I told him to go and get some rope and come back and pull me out, which I immediately regretted. Xenia ran away, and I was left alone, underground, at night, in the cemetery. I felt scared, and to distract myself, I began to hum a song. An old children's song about white-maned horses. I decided to look around. I was in some kind of earthen room, about 20 meters wide. It was obviously artificial. I realized this right away. Either because the walls were too smooth, or because of the creepy statue standing in the middle. I approached it, and I became even more scared. The statue was a little bit shorter than me, and depicted some kind of humanoid monster. Just imagine, A person, arms and legs, everything is normal. But on the head there are huge eyes, each the size of a watermelon, and horns sticking out of the head. The mouth generally resembles a tiger's, and the teeth stick out like daggers. I realized then that I had to get out of there, and the faster the better. Thank God, Xenia quickly returned. He threw me a rope. I began to climb, but Xenia, the idiot, stood at the very edge, and as soon as I pulled, he immediately fell towards me. I gave him a piece of my mind and went crazy at him. After that, we started looking for another exit. We found it quickly, as it turned out. There was a wooden door, but it was so low that we had to bend over to get through. We found ourselves in a corridor just as low. Who cut these passages here, installed the door, and erected the semblance of a sanctuary? Only the devil knows. We were not interested then. We rushed along these corridors, lighting our lights with flashlights. We wandered around here for almost an hour, and looked at a lot of things. There was furniture, shelves, cabinets. There were dishes, but everything was so small, as if made for children. We got out of that dungeon by dawn, and immediately ran away from here. We did not know where we came out, so we just ran forward until we ran out to a hill. We climbed it, and decided to take a rest. We sat down on the grass, caught our breath, and then I saw some strange people walking below, about 500 meters away from us. They had a very strange gait, as if they were swaying from one foot to the other. Then I took a closer look, and realized that they were somehow small for normal people. Although they were walking far away, I got a good look at them. I realized then what they were, and that they were here, the inhabitants of that dungeon, either gnomes or hobbits, or some other evil spirits. I said to Xenia, "Look," but he was filled with fear, threw me down on the grass, and whispered to me to be quiet. I did not understand right away, but Xenia just said to me, "Am I blind or something?" I looked again at this little thing, and saw that they were not walking empty-handed. Some had a human hand, some a leg, and some were even dragging a head. We lay there on the ground until those creatures disappeared from sight. We got up later and were about to leave, but someone screamed in the forest. The scream was so terrible that Xenia and I completely lost our minds and started running. Apparently, animal nature took over. The instinct for self-preservation woke up. We ran like that all the way to the car. I don't even know how we ever managed to find the road back in a state as panicked as that. We had long forgotten about the valuables left at the cemetery. As soon as we got in the car, Xenia stepped on the gas, and we were already rushing back to the city. We arrived that same evening, and decided that God forbid we ever go robbing graves again. But it occurred to us way too late. The next day I was sitting at home, watching TV. I decided to have a smoke. I was standing by the window, blowing rings. I live on the 3rd floor, so I can see passers-by well. And then I saw some strange man standing below, as if he was looking at me, and his head was tilted so strangely, as if he had a nervous tick. I did not pay any attention to him then, threw away the cigarette, and went back to the TV. Then I thought that maybe it was just some kind of drug addict. Well, there are lots of these kinds of people around where I live. One time I'm walking from the metro, and some guy is standing there, looking at me, either an alcoholic or a drug addict. Or I'll go out to the store, and some other idiot will follow me. They were all strange. One limps somehow unnaturally, another has an unusually twisted neck. A third's hands are shaking, and his face is like from a horror movie. So what, I thought, as if there weren't enough strange people in our city. I've seen such freaks before. Only there were fewer of them. None of them paid any attention to me, and now it's like an open day in a madhouse. I was scared of it. The last straw was that 3 of these idiots were standing in my yard, and they kept looking into my windows. They stood there all day, and only in the morning they disappeared somewhere. I went to Xenia's, but I never got there. I went up to his house and saw an ambulance there, a crowd at the entrance, and the police walking around. I sensed something bad. I went closer, asked one old woman what had happened, and she said that they had found a body in apartment number 15. Apartment 15 was Xenia's apartment. I realized then, I don't even know how, that these creatures had come for Xenia too, and they got to him before they got to me. So, it was all somehow connected with those gnomes, but how, I don't know. I went home, started packing up my things, decided to leave, to hide from them, but nothing worked out for me. I moved to a neighboring city, lived for a week in a rented apartment, and one night there was a knock at my door. Who comes to visit at night? I looked through the peephole and almost died of fear. There stood that creature that was depicted on the statue in that damn dungeon. So I rolled down on the floor, praying in a whisper that this freak would leave me alone. It kept calling until the morning. I thought I would go crazy from all this ringing. I decided towards morning that I had to run out of this apartment, went to the window, and saw this creature creeping up to the garbage container. I sat down and watched from the windowsill. It climbed into the container, and 10 minutes later, the guy crawled out. His hands were shaking, and he was limping on his right leg. So that's who all these strange fools were. They found me here. They will find me somewhere else. I can't hide from them anywhere, so I decided, I'll come, I'll burden my soul, and finally meet this monster. That's all I have to say. How do you even end a confession? Amen, I guess. He left as suddenly as he had appeared, leaving me with the thoughts that his words had evoked. At first I decided that he was simply a madman. I too often see people on the streets with strange gait and strange behavior, but that does not mean that they are some kind of monsters. But still, he told it too convincingly. His story sounded too coherent and consistent. Although my mind rejects it, somewhere inside, I admit I believe him. Alright, X. I'm going to tell you the story of the Shambling Man. This happened last summer, but I've put off telling the story because I was always too lazy to actually type it up. It's Halloween, and I'm waiting on my laundry as I write this, so I have nothing better to do. I'll start posting once it's all written up. I want to hear some opinions on this thing, because I still have no idea what the hell to think. No idea what the creature could be. No real idea as to whether it's even dangerous. Nothing. A little background knowledge. I changed schools after my freshman year in high school, but I still spent a lot of time with my friends from my first high school. I'm in my first year of college now, and I still talk to these guys almost daily. They live about 30 minutes away from my parents' house, which is in the Minnesotan suburb, about 20 minutes outside of the Twin Cities. Fairly populous. The town my friends live in is about 50 minutes away, and is a mix of suburbs and farmland. Much smaller population. Be me. June of last summer. Heading home from hanging out with friends from high school. Decide to take the back roads instead of the freeway. Back roads from friend's house to mine are pretty scenic, mostly cutting through fields and prairies with the occasional wooded section. Also passes a lot of farms. About 10 minutes down the road, after passing a few farms, in this dinky little sub-1,000 population town, complete with a dirt road and everything. Rolling up towards an intersection when I see something massive in the road. This big, pale, humanoid figure is basically on me crawling across the road in front of my car. Looks up at me. This thing looks like it has the frame of an anorexic NBA player, with skin that sagged like it recently had a major liposuction that took it from 300 pounds to 120. Start braking when another car comes over the hill towards me. Has those bright-ass white headlights, very clearly has the brights on. Instinctively look up at it for a second to make sure I'm not going to hit them, and then look back down at the thing in the road. It's just gone. The scariest thing about the creature was not its appearance, but the way it moved. Its arms moved like the metal thing on the outside of steam engines that drives the wheels, pick related. That was the first sighting. I convinced myself for a while that it was just a trick of the light with some fog or whatever. This was before the second encounter. 2 months pass, now mid-August. By this point, the creature had sort of become a thing of legend among our friend group. Friends came up with the name, the Shambling Man, even though it was just kind of crawling and not shambling. Regardless, I had to admit, the name was kind of catchy. The name ended up sticking. We sometimes refer to it is Chandler the Shambler, or just Chandler for short. Anyway, end up going to the Mall of America for one day to hang out with friend and his girlfriend. His girlfriend lives with him and his family for reasons that I would not be polite to go into. Decide midway through the trip to spend the night at aforementioned friend's house. We drove to the mall separately because it was sort of a last-minute plan. Drive to my house to grab clothes and stuff. Drive to friend's house along the same back roads as before. As I pass the place where I first saw the Shambler, this horrible feeling overtakes me. Eyes actually tear up a bit. Feel kind of sick to my stomach. None of this compared to the feeling of utter dread that hit me like a fucking bat though. Nearly hyperventilate before I'm able to get a grip. Normally, I'm a pretty composed person. I don't get scared very easily, and at this point, I had driven on this road like 20 times since this encounter. Basically, this was not some ordinary fear that you get when you do something scary. This wasn't some roller coaster style stomach sickness. This was out of nowhere. This was survival instinct fear, and I was terrified. Finally, the feeling passes. Keep driving down the road, trying not to go flying into the ditch as I wipe tears out of my eyes. I'm a little confused and very surprised. I never break down like this. About 5 minutes away from my friend's house, look back and forth between my driver's side window and the windshield. Watch the trees and brush slowly move by to calm my nerves a bit. That's when I see it. The Shambling Man is standing next to a tree on the side of the road. Just standing there, staring directly at me. At least, I think it is. I can't really see its eyes, but its head is pointed right at me. My heart drops, and I speed up so I can get to friend's house. His sister lets me in. Friend and his girlfriend have not gotten there yet. Bring my stuff to the basement. Call friend. Where are you? They're out hitting polka stops at a park nearby. Sort of just shake my head as he is talking and interrupt. I saw it again. He's confused. I saw the Shambling Man again. Brief pause. I'll be right there. He gets back, grabs 2 combat knives for him and myself. Let's go find this thing. Exploring the area is a whole nother story, but we did not actually find the thing. I had my friend stand in the exact spot that I saw the creature in though. From what I could tell, the thing was several inches taller than my friend. My friend is 6'7". While we did not find the Shambler, we did find this weird, ghetto shelter lean-to in a really eerie, foggy clearing that we thought was a pond at first, before we noticed a mound in the middle with a single, solitary tree on top. The most notable thing that happened was at the end though. Befriend and myself, walking along a horse trail, parallel to the road, with a 10 or 15 foot buffer of brush and trees between the two. Friend's girlfriend is waiting in the car across the street, in the entrance of a dog park, with a set of simple instructions. Keep the doors locked, keep the car running. If you see us running, let us in, and get us the fuck out. Call if you see anything. So we make our way down this horse trail, and we see the car at the end of the path. There's the car. I hope GF is doing alright. Keep walking. Suddenly terror. Stop walking. Friend turns around. What are you doing? That's not our car. What do you mean? GF is waiting with the car running, remember? Dude, we parked on the other side of the road. We had to cross it to get here. Oh fuck. See a guy walk through the light from the car to the side closest to us. Can barely hear him talking to someone else. They haven't seen us yet. Whisper to friend. I'm gonna count to 4. When I get to 4, book it to the middle of the brush where we came in and duck down. 1. The men get closer. 2. I can hear their voices still, but they've begun to talk more quietly. 3. Pause. Heart is fucking hammering. 4. We sprint into the brush and drop. We breathe quietly for what feels like 20 minutes, but was probably more like 20 seconds. Finally, I lift my head a bit to look around. I point towards the road. Friend nods. We sprint across the street to his car like a fucking bear is hot on our heels. peel out of the dog park. Other car pulls onto the road and starts following us. We get to a stoplight and I turn around. Car is gone. What the fuck? Make it back safely. We plan on going back to look around again come Thanksgiving break, but that's what I got for now. Be 12 years old. Get sent to a correctional summer camp by mistake because best friend's mom is ESL. 1,200 kids. I am one of 5 white kids. Friend and I get assigned to Cherokee Camp. Cherokee Camp is pretty in the woods, and my cabin is even further in the woods, about 25 meters away from a large creek. Cabins are your basic 15 by 15 6-foot wall with 4 feet of openness into the roof. Bunk beds. Bottom bunk is mashed up against the wall. Top bunk is exactly parallel with the open window. Get a top bunk assigned. Camp generally pretty cool. Late one night, laying in my bunk. New moon. Night is blacker than I have ever seen before. Hear what I thought was raccoons biting by creek. The fight manages to make its way right under my window. Screams and snarls rattle my existence. One creature slams into the side of the cabin and runs off howling. Hear growling and labored breathing. Then hear claws scratching and pulling through the window. Hide in sleeping bag. Creature climbs into bunk and sits on my legs. I cannot breathe, I am so terrified. Entire camp is dead quiet. Why won't anyone help me? Creature is impossibly heavy. I couldn't move even if I wanted to. It sits and licks itself for what feels like forever. Suddenly hear a truck tear into camp. Bright spotlights blaze into my cabin. Creature lets out some horrible scream, like something I've never heard before. It bolts out the window, so hard and fast, it rips my sleeping bag and scratches my left shin. Piss myself. Truck tears off into the woods, chasing after it. Next morning, find hollowed out raccoon by the creek. All other campers visibly frightened the next morning. They all thought I was dead. We all ask counselors what the hell happened. Never get a straight answer. 32 now. Still have a scar on my shin from whatever scratched me. This was way in Northern California. I was halfway through my senior year in high school when my parents decided to move to another state. They looked into ways that I could stay behind and finish school. We had an elderly neighbor who my parents had become close with, and they floated the idea of me staying at his house. He lived alone and had a second floor. They offered to pay him rent, and I could help him with chores or whatever he needed while I was there. In return, I could stay and finish my senior year. He was happy to help since he lived alone and he needed help around the house. I was really glad I did not have to move, so I agreed, and moved in once my parents had moved. A month goes by and everything is fine. My friend who lived down the street picks me up and drops me off after school. One day, my friend drops me off and heads home. I walk down the driveway to the back door, and when I got close, I see a trail of blood on the concrete leading up to the door, and the door is cracked open, and there is a dried bloody handprint on the doorknob and smeared on the door. I start to feel adrenaline shooting through me, and get real cold, and I had no idea what to do. This was 1993, so before cell phones were a common thing. I walked into the house, trying to figure out what had happened, and there was more blood on the floor, leading up to the kitchen, where a towel was soaked in blood and draping over the sink. I turned and walked into the living room, and saw the recliner he would sit in, and there was a big red spatter on the back, like he had been shot while sitting in his chair. I called out his name as loud as I could muster, and a few seconds later, I hear running water stop in the hallway bathroom. I had not identified the sound until it had stopped. I called out his name again, standing in the same place, starting to go into panic. No response. I realize that someone is there, and they are not responding. I completely panic and run out the back door. I sprint to my friend's house a few miles away, and get there completely out of breath. I ring the doorbell and knock. No answer, so I go around the corner to where his room is. I see him through the window and bang on the window. He turns around and sees me and is completely startled. He motions for me to go to the back door and he lets me in. I tell him what happened and I call my parents. My dad said he was going to call the police and to wait there, he would call me back. My dad calls back about 10 minutes later, said the police were on the way and to hang on. Just wait there while they investigate. 2 hours go by and my dad called back and he is furious, starts yelling at me about lying and what was wrong with me. Maybe I was not mature enough to be there without them. Tells me I'm in a lot of trouble. He was going to figure out how to handle this and hangs up. I call him back and plead that I was not lying. He said the police went there, no blood. The neighbor had answered and said he had no idea what I was talking about. My friend said I could stay there, but all of my stuff was at the other house. I stayed there that night. Called my dad again the next day, crying and telling him I was not lying and I was too afraid to go back. He said I would have to move to their new house and finish school. My friend even spoke with my dad and tried to explain that I had shown up, pale and shaking, and that I didn't seem to be lying. His parents let me stay there for a few weeks. I never picked up my clothes or laptop from the house. Never returned his house key or saw him again. I ended up finishing school, living with different friends, and my parents always thought it was a cry for attention. I still have no idea what happened there.